Welcome to chapter 54 of the book of Isaiah. Interesting chapter. It begins, be glad, O sterile one, stera. We have sterile. Stera comes from that. It's a derivative of the one not giving birth. Well, generally somebody that's sterile isn't told to be glad. Break forth and yell, O one not travailing, that is the one not having a child. For many are the children of the barren rather than the one having the husband. So this is a quotation that appears in Galatians 4:22 to 31. We'll go through it right here and see what Paul has to say about this. And he says, "For it has been written that Abraham had two sons, Isaac, Ishmael. One from the maidservant, Sarah had Isaac, and Hagar had Ishmael, and one from the free woman. That would have been Sarah. But the one indeed from out of the maidservant, Hagar, has been born according to flesh. But the one from out of the free woman, Sarah, was through the promise. That is, the promise that God had given to Abraham of having a son. And he had only had Ishmael, and he said, was Ishmael? And God said, no. And Sarah was old, but yet the promise was through Sarah. And now Paul tells us which things are allegorized. Now, he's allegorizing it, but it's also, he mentions this part of Isaiah. And he says, for these are the two covenants. One covenant, indeed, from Mount Sinai, Hagar born in slavery, which is Hagar. For Hagar is Mount Sinai. Now, I'm not in Arabia. I'm not exactly, you always thought it was in Mount Sinai. It was in Sinai, but Arabia, and corresponding with the present Jerusalem. And she slave with her children. Now, here Paul is making a change. Normally, you would think of the Jews as being with the free woman, Sarah, but he's allegorizing it, and he's saying, well, the Jews of today, since Jesus was crucified and rose from the dead, now these people that are following him are the real children of God, not the Jews that were born of the flesh. This is basically what he's saying. And so the Jews correspond with the present Jerusalem, and she slaved with her children. But the upward Jerusalem is free. Now, I love that, because the upward Jerusalem, what is he talking about, the upward Jerusalem? Well, now they do use the word going up to Jerusalem, because it was high up, and this is just a common term that was used to go to Jerusalem. Even though you may have been down south, we in the United States would say you would go up. If I was down in Florida, you would go up to New York. If you're in New York, you would say you were going down to Florida on a map, but that's not the way it was in the Bible. Here it was up to Jerusalem, but the upward Jerusalem is free, and I believe he's talking about the New Jerusalem that appears in the book of Revelation, which is mother of us all. Now he's showing that it's not just the Jews, but it's all the people that are followers of Jesus Christ. This is what Paul's bringing out. And it says, for it has been written, be glad, O sterile. And now he's quoting what we're at in Isaiah, not giving birth. Break asunder and yell, O one not travailing. For many are the children of the barren, rather than the one having the husband. See, now it's almost identical here. And this is what's so wonderful about the Apostolic Bible. You have the Greek going along, and you can study all these words in both testaments are the same. And he didn't choose the Hebrew to quote. And so, and he continues, and he says, and we, brothers, like Isaac, are children of promise, the Christians, but as then the one born according to the flesh persecuted the one born according to the Spirit, that would have been Ishmael and against Isaac, so also now. But what says the Scripture? It says, cast out the maidservant and her son. So now he has changed it to make the Jews the maidservant, and so the Jews are the ones that are to be cast out. For not in any way shall the son of the maidservant inherit with the son of the free one. So just because a Jew is a Jew, because of the blood and the genes in him, doesn't mean he's going to inherit the things of God. It doesn't come through that type of inheritance. It comes through the Spirit. Even though he is a Jew, and there are promises to the Jews all the way eternal, for all way out. And then he says, so then, brothers, we are not children of the maidservant, but of the free one. Now, I made a little graph here, and let's go to that. So now here's Abraham, and what he's saying there, Sarah equals the free woman, Hagar, the bondwoman. Isaac was of the free woman, Ishmael, the bondwoman. Isaac was born through the promise, and Ishmael was born of the flesh. He just had sex with Sarah, and there was no promise. And this is the covenant of the upward Jerusalem, now we're told by Paul, and the covenant of Mount Sinai, which is present Jerusalem, of the Jews, and even today, I would say, because it really hasn't changed. And I thank God for people like Paul that were Jews, but yet we're not afraid to stand up for the truth of the Bible, of God and his relationship with the Jews and with other people. And we can see that because of Paul and because of Isaiah, who wrote this out knowing that it was for a future time, and other prophets that were writing things that were basically the Jews of the day would have hated, and the Jews of today may still hate. Now, I know they hate Paul because I was working at a hotel years ago and reading the Bible and doing the Greek translation, and this Jewish man came in and started railing on me and started blaming everything on Paul. He said, it's all because of Paul that we are being persecuted and so forth. But it's not. It's because of disbelief. And so therefore, the children of the barren, it was Sarah, and the one having the husband, the bondwoman Hagar, many children, Christians, to the children of the barren, to say, and the born of the promise, and they are to cast out the maidservant and the son from the things of God. If you're just because you're a Jew, then that does not mean that you are part of the promise. You're part of the covenants that God set, but we'll see more about this. And so the one having born according to the flesh, and that one persecutes the one of the Spirit. The Jews persecute the ones of the Spirit today even, and they persecuted Christ. So a lot there. For thus spoke the Lord, widen the place of your tent. So now we go through this chapter, and a lot of this is your, and we're not sure what he's talking about. If you didn't look at the last verse, you can, and try to figure out, write all the things down who you is. Well, we're told by Paul basically, and then we're told in verse 17 that it's the ones attending the Lord. It's not Jews. It's not of flesh, but the ones attending the Lord. And we will see that as it goes. So basically, ones attending the Lord, widen the place of your tent. So the Christians that are now widening the place of the God, tell other people, and pitch the hide coverings of your curtains. Spare not. You should spare not. Distance out your measured lands and strengthen your tent pegs. Go out and tell people, evangelize. And basically, this is what Isaiah is saying. God is saying through Isaiah to the people 500 or 600 years before Christ. Spread forth yet unto the right and unto the left, for your seed shall inherit nations, and you shall dwell in cities having been made desolate. So now, the Christians, the Jews, the ones that were Jewish at the time that Jesus came, there were thousands and thousands of them that became believers in Jesus Christ. They became the early Christians. It was all Jews. It wasn't until the Ethiopian eunuch became a believer in Christ, the first Gentile, as it was called in the King James. And so we have the Jews to thank because they brought the Word of God down and spread it even to the time of Christ. And many people there saw who Christ was, that he was God incarnate, and they believed in him. And they went out, and they were persecuted by the ones of the flesh, the Jews of the flesh, and they were persecuted, but they fled and left and went out and went to these nations. And it says you're going to inherit them and dwell in cities being made desolate. So they went out, and Christianity took over the world. You should not fear, the phobia as a derivative, that you were disgraced, nor should you feel ashamed that you were berated. For you shall forget the everlasting shame and the scorn of your widowhood. In no way shall you remember any longer. So even though things were against you, the Jews were against you, and Romans might have been against them, wherever they went out, people were against them. And today, people don't want to hear about Jesus. Europe is becoming post-Christian, but yet the scorn is not going to be forever. For the Lord, the one making you, the one making us, the Christians, as believers in the Spirit, the Lord of hosts is his name, Sabaoth, Onoma. Even the one rescuing you, he is the God of Israel. Now, this is the only place it mentions Israel here, and that's saying that is who he is. He is the God of Israel. But that doesn't mean this whole chapter is all about Israel. I don't see it. He shall be called God of all the earth. There you go. So it's not just the Jews. He's going to be called God of all the earth. Probably the Jews hated this because, maybe and maybe not. They may have said, now everybody's going to know that the Jew is the one that God is, Israel, and we will rule the world, which they will be suckered into basically by the beast. I believe in the book of Revelation shows that. Babylon become as Jerusalem, and this is what will happen. But he is the God of all the earth. Not as a faint-hearted, not as a forsaken and faint-hearted woman has the Lord called you, nor as a woman being detested from youth, said your God. A little time I left you behind, chrono, mikron, chronology, and micro, small. A small time I left you behind, and with great mercy I will show mercy on you. So the Christians, I'm not exactly sure, being left behind, maybe this is what seems to be with Christians that are being persecuted, but he will show mercy on the Christians. In a little rage I turned my face from you, and in eternal mercy I will show mercy on you, said the one rescuing you, that is the ones attending to the Lord. Now you could still say, well, it was Israel, and this is what it's talking about here, and you'd have a good argument, but the next verse will show something different. From the water of the one upon Noah, this is my plan, insofar as I swore by an oath to him, that is to Noah, in that time, to the earth to not be enraged against you any longer, nor by your intimidation. So, what is he talking about here? Well, there were no Jews at the time of Noah. Noah was before Abraham, but yet God had his plan, and we'll go up here to 2, and we'll see what it has to say in Genesis. And God said to Noah and to his sons, saying, Behold, I raise up my covenant to you, and to your seed after you, and every living soul after you. Everybody, it's us. In fowls, and from cattle, and to all the wild beasts of the earth, and as many as are with you, from all of the ones coming forth from out of the ark. And I will establish my covenant with you. And all flesh will not die any longer from the water of the flood, and there shall not be any longer a flood of water to lay waste all the earth. And God said to Noah, This is the sign of the covenant which I execute between me and you, and between every living soul, as much as with you for eternal generations. So this is us. I put my bow in the heaven. The toxon is like a bow and arrow bow, and not the rainbow. That's iris. And it shall be for a sign of covenant between me and the earth. And it will be in my collecting together clouds upon the earth. The bow will be seen in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you, and between every living soul among all flesh. And there will not be any longer the water for a flood, so as to wipe away all flesh. That doesn't mean there's not going to be floods. And my bow will be in the cloud, and I will see it to remember the eternal covenant between me and the earth, and between the living soul which is in all flesh upon the earth. And God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant with which I ordained between me and between all flesh which is upon the earth. So here is what he's saying. This my plan was from the very beginning. It was not exclusive to the Jews. It was exclusive to the world, earth, and it's gone out to the earth now. Shall the mountains change over, nor your hills shall be moved about? So not even mercy shown by me to you shall fail. It's not going to fail, his mercy. And neither the covenant for your peace in any way shall change. Now he's got a covenant for our peace. Now, what is this covenant for our peace he's talking about, that God's talking about? Numbers 25:12. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, well, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, these are the Levites, son of Aaron the priest, caused my rage to cease from the sons of Israel, in my being jealous in the zeal for them. And I did not completely consume the sons of Israel in my zeal. Thus say, behold, I make with him, not Aaron, but Phinehas, my covenant of peace, or you could say the Levite, but I believe it is the ones that are, again, the tending to the Lord, not all the Levites, because later they will not be, in the book of Ezekiel, the 40th chapter, the Levites are not the ones that are going to be chosen, number one, to do the things of God, just the priests of Zadok. And it will be to him and to his seed after him a covenant of an eternal priesthood, because he was jealous for his God, and he atoned for the sons of Israel. So the ones that are attending the Lord will become the eternal priesthood. It's not something that will end. They will be that in forever, in eternity. Joshua makes a covenant of peace, but he made it with Gibeon in Joshua 9:15. But in Ezekiel 34:25 it says, and I shall raise up for them one shepherd, Jesus is talking about here, and he will tend them as my bondman David. He's relating it, Jesus, to David. He will tend them, and he will be their shepherd. And I, the Lord, will be to them for God, it should be a D, and my bondman David in the midst of them a ruler, and that's Jesus. I, the Lord, have spoken. And I will ordain with them a covenant of peace. There it is, when Isaiah is talking about. It is when Jesus comes. And I will obliterate the ferocious wild beast from the land. And I was wondering, well, I wonder if that's the ferocious wild beast is referring to the beast, the wild beast in Revelation. I'm not sure. And then in 37:26, and my bondman, David my bondman, as Jesus, ruling them into the eon, not David, but it's Jesus, and I will order with them a covenant of peace. It will be an eternal covenant with them. So there you go. This is an eternal covenant to us, the ones attending the Lord. For the Lord spoke kindness to you. Humble and confused, you were not, but you were not comforted. Behold, I prepare for you a carbuncle for your stone, and for your foundations sapphire. And I believe this is what he's talking about, the New Jerusalem. And the foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with every precious stone. The first foundation was jasper, the second sapphire, third chalcedony, fourth emerald, the fifth sardonyx, the sixth carnelian, the seventh chrysolite, the eighth beryl, the ninth topaz, the 10th chrysoprase, the 11th hyacinth, and the 12th amethyst. And this is Revelation 21:19 to 20. So he's preparing the New Jerusalem for your foundations. And I will make the parapets of jasper. And there it is, your gate stones of crystal, and your enclosure of choice stone. Where else could this be but the New Jerusalem of the book of Revelation? The Jews are missing all this out today. Boy, they just don't have any of it. I mean, it's wonderful to have the Messiah, to have the understanding of all these things of the Old Testament. And I just can't imagine reading this and not really having that understanding and wondering what it's talking about when it's all given through Jesus Christ. In all your sons instructed of God, and as much peace to your children. And so this is what the inheritance of the Christians is, being instructed by God. And you shall be built in righteousness at a distance from unjust. And now I believe he's talking about Jerusalem. And we see here that it says, and in no way should enter into her, the New Jerusalem, Revelation 21:27, anything common in committing an abomination and a lie, only the ones being written in the scroll of the life of the Lamb. And here it is. But at a distance from the unjust, we will be when we are in the New Jerusalem. I can't wait. And you shall not be fearful, and trembling shall not approach to you. Behold, converts shall come forward to you, the ones attending the Lord, because of me, and they shall sojourn with you, and unto you they shall take refuge. The people that have come from around the world to the United States now, Muslims and Hindus, a lot of them are becoming Christians as they see the difference. They couldn't see it in their country because it's all Muslim, but now they see things that are different. And same thing with the Hindus and the Buddhists. 16, behold, ego, I created you, not as a brazier blowing in a fire of coals and bringing forth a utensil for work. Halkefs, I'm trying to think of the Chalcolithic age, the Bronze Age comes from the Halkefs, ergonomics. But so we're not made as a utensil of a work as a iron worker, but I created you not for destruction to corrupt. So we are not going to be corrupted. Every weapon concocted against you shall not be prosperous. And every voice that shall rise up against you for judgment, all of them you shall vanquish. So us Christians, even though it doesn't say they're not going to rise up, it says they will rise up, but they will be vanquished through the power of God. And the ones liable of you shall be in her. That is in her. Now, what is her? All of a sudden this pops up. The feminine, afti, and nothing else was the feminine. Where do we go back to see a voice? That's not what he's talking about. Her, every weapon. No, I don't think that's it. I created you, and that's not feminine. Utensils, I created you. You go back, and there's nothing there. All of a sudden, this her pops up. Now, what's this feminine her? And the ones liable of you shall be in her. The ones that I'm liable of being a Christian. We're going to be in her. What is he talking about? Well, there it is. Revelation 21:9. Come, I will show to you the wife, the bride of the Lamb. Feminine. The wife, the bride, is New Jerusalem. In her. And this is exactly what it is. It gives me the willies reading this because it's, wow. It's so interesting, and having this knowledge of the New Testament to go along with it. It is the inheritance to the ones attending the Lord. There it is. This whole thing is the inheritance. We are inheriting the things of the Lord. Just like I inherited when my parents passed away, enough money to buy this house in Newport, Oregon. That was my inheritance. It was a good inheritance, and I've used it, and God has blessed it, and it's now the home for the Apostolic Bible Polyglot. But the inheritance of all of us, you, me, is going to be everlasting, eternal, aeonial, into the eons. And you shall be just ones to me, that is, righteous ones to me, says the Lord. That means that we will be just, and we will not be found guilty of sin. Wonderful chapter. Boy, I just loved it. I love studying it, using this new program that I have to put all these places and lead. Now, actually, it's better than those little pop-up notes. You can see it a lot better, and I'm going to continue using this, so forget about calling PDF expert. God has solved it without PDF expert. Next, chapter 55, an invitation to life. So if you want to have this, it starts off, woe the ones thirsting, go into the water. And there's a wonderful song that goes like that. Woe everyone that thirsteth, go ye to the water. Ye that have no money, go ye buy and eat. So that's where this comes from. Well, my singing is terrible, but 55, God will do a wonderful thing and expound to us his word. Hope you'll join us, and God bless.